Hello, friends. Woo! Welcome back to another week of In the Middle of podcast. Today, I have the best person on the planet joining me. Her name is Kathryn Gardner. Say hello.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for having me, Darce.
You're so welcome. Okay, y'all, a little bit about Kathryn. Some of the top things that come to mind. One, she's first and foremost the most selfless person you might meet. She's been a teacher for years and has recently shifted gears, and she's now an instructional coach. She's an incredible leader. She's a wife to Nick Gardner, and her and Nick, I don't think is a day that goes by where they live in Texas that they don't have college students in their home. So if that tells you anything about their lives, it's fun, it's full of whimsy, and it's really just full of faith. And so who better to have on the podcast than Kathryn to talk about these middle seasons of life that we often and might always find ourselves in. Kathryn, I just really wanted to have you on. So I want to give you all a little bit of history into my friendship. Throw it back a little bit. Kathryn, you could jump into the story so I don't butcher it. But this is kind of funny. So Kathryn and Nick have this thing where, and they've kind of changed it and empowered some college students to start bringing food now, which I respect.
True.
But
we still feed them. They help bring
still feed them.
Yeah. They help us
during my time, we were spoiled. Okay. I was in college at Texas A&M, and one of my friends, Harper, she was like, hey, I met this couple and they want us to come over for dinner tonight. And I was just like, sign me up. You had me at free dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
It was even on like a breakaway Tuesday. I was like, I'm going. And so we pull up to their apartment at the time, and we just jumped straight. It was like a deep dive into like deep friendship.
Yeah. What was Nick's first question to you?
Nick's first question to me is, what's your story?
So where do I start?
So two really incredible people, but that is how I got to know Kathryn and Nick. And that is really the story of how their mentorship and friendship began in my life, just opening up their door, opening up their table, and seeking to get to know college students. What a weird thing, but so incredible. They love them, and they still continue to love them even when you're out of college. So praise Jesus for that. Kathryn, talk to me a little bit. So you're plugged into a church in College Station, Texas. Tell me a little bit about that church body.
We are at a church called Citizens that we love. Just really feel like the Holy Spirit is moving there. It's full of college kids, which, living in a city like Bryan College Station, you want the church you go to, or we do specifically, to look like the city we live in. And if there are 90,000 to 100,000 college students here, that's a big population. So that should match in the church body. We think that was important to us. And so we found Citizens. It's kind of crazy. I was scrolling social media like one January, and I was just looking for churches, and I looked at every single one I could find in BCS, and there are a lot. And their Big C Church in Bryan College Station is amazing. Like, so many good ones to choose from, so many pastors who are faithful, so many congregations who love Jesus. But there was one that stood out to me, and it was Citizens. And I can't even tell you why. I just knew it was special. I don't know. So I started listening to the podcast. And then we found out that it was on Sundays at 4, and we were like, Sundays at 4, like, sign us up for that. So we just started going and love the people, really love the families. We're watching young kids and families be there, and just we're really astounded by the quality of people and children and family units, and like how people were raising their families. And we were like, this is where we could plant, like really plant for decades, and raise our kids here. So yeah, we made the jump, and we have absolutely loved it. And it's funny because around a year ago, we really didn't know anyone. And now, we walk in and we just feel like it's our family, and it's really become our home. So we love it.
Yeah. a
Mm-hmm.
couple weekends ago, and I guess by the time y'all hear this, it'll be maybe a month or so ago. I got to visit Nick and Kathryn, and I visited them on a Sunday at their home church, and it really is just like the sweetest place and the sweetest
Yeah.
community and the
Yeah.
sweetest family. And what really led me to being like, I must come and see all the incredible things Jesus is up to here. Kathryn gave a message over the summertime
Mm-hmm.
on something that just really struck my heart in a season that I needed it. And I think it's so
Yeah.
kind of him to give us people in our life that can speak truth into it, even over like a microphone or a podcast or whatever it may
Right.
be, through knowing them. And so that was Kathryn's message for me when she gave it. And then I got to replay it. Shout out technology.
We love it.
But inside of this message, Kathryn, you said something really cool that I want to talk about because I feel like it's a really helpful thing for young adults to do in general, really anybody. But in this message, you gave the practical tip to name and title the season you're in. And so I just want to talk about that. So why do you feel like it's helpful that we title the seasons of life we're in?
Well, a couple reasons. First of all, that was not my question. I stole the question from this game that we love called We're Not Really Strangers. I got to plug that because it is like the best game ever. We love to play. And I remember a couple years ago when we had just moved to Texas, we were sitting out on our balcony at our old apartment playing. And Nick asked me that question for the first time. I hadn't heard it before. And he was like, "What if you could title this chapter of your life? What would you title it?" And I was like, that is such a good question, you know? And as a reading teacher, that's like always, that kind of stuff's always going on in my mind. So I'm like, main idea, you know, that's what the title is. It's the main idea. The main idea is what it's mostly about. So I think it's getting you to think like, what is my life mostly about right now? Like, what is mostly happening? And in that season, the title of my chapter was Texas Part 1. That's what I named it, which is just felt like the intro to Texas. And then we went through another season, and I can specifically think about it. And I called that one Texas Part 2. It just felt like a transitional, like we're in a different phase. I'm out of the Texas chapters now, but I was thinking while I was, you know, my pastor called me right before he left for sabbatical over the summer and was like, "Hey, I would really love for you to teach." And he lives in my neighborhood. And so I thought he was calling to tell me that my house was on fire. So I was like, why is Ben calling me? But he was asking me to teach, which came out of left field, like honestly. And immediately I was like, no, you know, I don't want to do that. But then I just felt, I really felt like Jesus was saying, there are things I'm teaching you now that other people need to know. And you only don't want to do it because you're scared. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I had a couple things that I felt like I could talk about that I know well and that I have learned over the last couple of years, but it wasn't really relevant to like what God is doing in my life right now, which is learning how to walk through fear. I won't say walk with fear, walk through fear. And when I sat down and started like kind of fleshing it out, putting it all together, I just realized that the reason why I'm experiencing a lot of fear is because I feel in the middle of a lot of things. And so I started thinking about my life, and I almost titled it different things like the in-between or like the desert or the wilderness. Like those were things that were going around my mind. And then I ultimately settled on the middle because I just really feel like it says it the best. Like I just am in between so many things in so many areas of my life. So I think naming the title, to go back to your question, naming the season of your life makes you reflect on the things you're walking through and give it a name. And then I think it helps you walk through it better.
Yeah, that's so good. I agree. I think not like isolating yourself or acting like stuff isn't happening, but saying
Right.
like, okay, this is where my feet are at, and this is the present thing that I'm between. Okay, so with your season and you making the choice of like, okay, title,
Yeah.
And she called the congregation. She was like, everybody name your season. And it was great to get to like listen. And I was like,
and it's fun to do that with people. Like, what's the title of your season of life right now? And you learn so much about people, like so much. We did it in our community small group. And, we were going around and saying it. I was like, some people are in great seasons where they feel really strong. And some people are in seasons where they feel really depleted. And it was so great to be able to know that about people that fast and like know what they,
Yes.
So,
shameless plug to we're not really strangers. I'll have to
get it.
I need to read. I had it somewhere. Honestly, I think someone fell in love with it and like stole it from me. And I was like, take it.
That is sad. Well, we had some friends gift it to us. So that was a good gift.
We would always, me and my college roommates would always skip. There's like phase 1 of like the like more surface level.
Yeah.
We'd be like,
it's
move those over. We need like level 3.
So it's like, how do we perceive each other? And then level 2 is connection. So you really connect on those. And then level 3 is like a reflection of all of the connections. It's so good. So good.
So good. And then when they have you like write a note to the person at the end of the game, bye. That's like the best part.
And there's a clear card that you can put on top of a card that just says dig deeper. Oh. And we'll do that in real life. Like when we're talking with each other, Nick and I will be like, dig deeper.
That's like, true. Y'all do that.
Yeah.
Y'all do that. Like the first question to me, what's your story? And I don't even know if y'all play this game. Y'all have always been this way. Actually, when I just came to visit y'all were like, and what do you mean? Like,
tell
what
us.
Else? And then you just open up because Nick and Kathryn are some of life's safest people. I love them.
We do try.
Y'all are the best. Okay, so for the person listening in that maybe is in agreement with you and with me, because I would agree too, like my season very much could be called the middle. How do we live in the middle between more so difficult things, but also maintain hope for the future? Like, I think sometimes we can be all gloom and doom and like today is horrible. So, and just get in this, like, if you're familiar with Winnie the Pooh, like this Eeyore mindset of just like mope around and like, I don't know about all that, but also like hope for the future and then even joy in the present. Cause I feel like some people forget and you have to remind yourself and remind your flesh, like, hey, like joy and hard things can coexist. So how do we get to a place where we can like walk that out?
That is such a loaded question. I think, first of all, I think all of us are in a season in the middle somewhere. I think if you're not in the middle of something in some area of your life, relationally, financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically, then you're probably dead. So we don't want that. You should be like always kind of moving from mountaintop to, you should be always going through that. But I found in my life, one of the things that the enemy does in a season of the middle to keep me from moving forward or to keep me stuck really is fear. And what I've learned so much this year, and I'm still learning, I'm not a master, but it's funny actually. You know how everyone at the beginning of the year is like, what's your word for the year? Yeah. And I've had one every year for like 5 years. And this year I told myself I wasn't going to have one. I was like, I'm over having a word. And then this incredible woman at our church, Steph Lee, preached a message around Advent time about beholding Jesus. And I still can't get it off my heart, like to behold. And so I think so much of the middle is like centric, like self-centric, like we're here. We're just, I can only see me. I can only see my story. I can only see my pain. I can only see my worry. But the best way to combat that is to behold, like to get out of yourself and to just look up and to get out. Because, and my friend Steph said this, she said, when we behold Jesus, like maybe the circumstances don't change, but everything changes when we behold Jesus. When we know who he is, when we know what he can do, when we understand that because of who he is, what that makes us, and knowing that we can trust him to guide us through the season. I mean, there's so much in there, but I think ultimately, if we can just get our eyes off of ourselves and what we're experiencing and get our eyes on Jesus, that's the biggest thing.
That's so good. Because culture today, obviously, when you're tracking and you're walking and doing life with Jesus, you should be living like cross culturally, anyways. But it's kind of hard in the midst of it when you're surrounded by people that do give into culture, even sometimes when you do, when culture's shouting and proclaiming this message of like, it's all about you and you and I and this. And then Jesus is like, hey, actually, I have the remedy for all of this. You might be a little offended by it, but it's actually not about you.
Right. Actually, I'm the main character. Jesus is saying that. Like,
yeah.
I think that's what he's been teaching me a lot. Like, because here I go reading teacher again. Our lives are in first person point of view in our minds. So when you read a first person point of view book, you know that person's the main character because you're reading it from their perspective. That's how we experience life. So it's easy to think we're the main character because we don't know anybody else's thoughts, But really what's happening is that Jesus is the main character and we have all been woven into his story. And he's let us be a part of that. And he wants us desperately to be a part of that. But it's not about us. It's about him. And we're just the little side actors that he loves very much and always takes care of. And there's always, he always knows where they're going and what they're doing. But we don't get the script all the time, the full thing.
Yeah, that's good. And that's even just good perspective too, because even in the midst of like a narrative of something, I was talking to a group of girls about this last night of why walk out God's will? Like, what is God's will and why should I even seek to walk it out? And I just ventured to tell them, I'm like, well, he is the author, the founder, the perfecter of life and all things good. And he's got the best blueprint in mind for your life. It's like having somebody like you go to a builder and they're like, you want a beautiful mansion or you want a shack? It's like, you're always going to go to the beautiful, literally like MASH.
Always.
Right. And it's like on pen and paper, it's like, yeah, I know what I want. But then when it comes to like living it out, it is hard. I want to jump back to something we like skimmed over just a second ago, but talking about identity and where we place our identities in. I know I referenced like Eeyore, and we can be in these seasons where we're like, well, my life is just this way, so it's going to continue to be this way. And so with that, I just feel like sometimes people over-identify their life and place their identity within the seasons they're in. So you know about this because probably a year ago I came to you and it was exactly a year ago. I was like, Kathryn, I am still single. Something is wrong. I want to be married. And I know for me still, like, even in recent seasons, and it's probably, to be candid with everyone listening, it's not till a place where recently I got super healthy with it because I understood this gift Paul was talking about. Like, if somebody brings you a gift, you got to enjoy that gift.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, okay, grandma, another sweater on Christmas, I'm good. It's like, be thankful that grandma's here. Hello.
Right.
But with that, I think sometimes even, for example, like my season, and for other people who are single, they're like, well, I'm just chronically and forever single. And then you wallow in it and you just like, it's like down this rabbit hole. And it's like, when someone meets you, it's like, hi, who are you? Hi, I'm single. And it's it's like, no, I'm Darcy. I'm daughter of a king. I'm loved. I'm all of the things. And so I just would love for you to speak on how impactful or maybe even detrimental is it when we place our identity in the wrong things?
I mean, I think you can ruin your life, like I really do. I think that sometimes what we go through is a result of brokenness, or it's a natural consequence of sin, or sometimes God is testing us. He never tempts, but he will test the character of our heart. And, but I think a lot of times we do let seasons define us, and that's putting God in a box. I think, like God is only the God of this for me. And God will be who we expect him to be. He will always be who we expect him to be. And I just think so many people feel like in the middle, or if they're in a season they don't want to be in, which is normally the middle of something, then we're always waiting for the next thing. Like, only the thing that comes after the season will make me happy. So I'm going to wait until this next thing happens. Like, for me, it's having kids. Like, Nick and I have been trying to have kids for years. And I could do that and just say, like, I am just the teacher who loves college kids and doesn't have kids. Like, I'm not a mother. I could say that, but I am a mother. And I know that I'm a mother because I know what God's put in my heart. You know what I mean? And I mother people in different ways right now, but I also know that God is good, and I know he knows the desires of our hearts, and I will mother in some way, in some form, someday. But I don't want to be found waiting my life away. When we have kids, I want them to find us living.
See that?
Not waiting. Like, I don't need the thing that I want to be complete. My life is everything it needs to be right now. Do I still desire things? Of course, but that doesn't mean it's unfinished. It just means it's not for me in this season, and that is okay. But I don't want to be found waiting. Like, we put our life on pause while we waited for kids. Absolutely not. I'm going to live every day. Like, I want to be a mom that they admire, I want to be a person that other people admire, and I want to be found living my life. Because you could waste away your whole life.
I love that. That's a handlebar. I want to be found living. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. And that's so true. Like,
that's where I am right now.
I want to be found living. I want to be found on a hot air balloon.
Like, let's go. Why can't I still experience my life and have fun and enjoy it just because I'm waiting I can still wait and I can still live. It's the power of and. It doesn't have to be or. Live in the and. That's actually Nick's word this year. That's what God's teaching him is you can be this and this. You can have both. You can live in the tension of, of both things. And it's more beautiful that way.
I love that. His word is and.
His word is and.
This is good. This is just, wow. We need, this could turn into a part 2.
Nick can come for part 2.
Nick can come on for part 2. Stay tuned. Nick, if you listen to this episode, this is your invite.
There you go.
We'll see if you catch it.
I won't say anything.
Okay. Let's see. Everyone listening, y'all can jump in on this too. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk a little bit on fear. We mentioned it earlier, and you were kind of just talking about it. I think sometimes fear can lock us up, and you were saying how I want to be found living. Like, I don't want to be found just like under a rock, scared of whatever. Like, I'm gonna live my life. And I think sometimes fear can cause people, can cause me, can cause whomever to, if we live in that fear, to stop living our life. So with that, I just want to talk about fear for a second. Like, I want to be super practical because I feel like there is going to be a person listening that doesn't even know that what they're entangled with is fear. Like, they don't even know how to identify fear. So let's start small. How might someone identify fear in their life? Or even like in the message you gave, what are just some fears we could have? You gave really practical fears. Like, one of them, I was like, I have this fear that I have to like step on and say no.
Really?
And you said it was the fear of your life not counting for something.
The fear
I was just like,
of never finding your place or making your life count. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big one.
I have battled and wrestled with that one. But how might someone listening identify fear in their life?
I think, and I don't fully know the answer to this, I don't think, but for me personally, when I know I'm scared of something, it's when I can't go like this. It's when I feel like, God, I got to hang on to something. And ultimately, the fear is that I can't trust God. That's the ultimate fear, like that he won't do what I want him to do. So if I ever get to this point where I'm not fully surrendered, I'm like, God, you can do whatever you want with this. but like this, I'm hanging on to, this I'm not willing to change. I know there's fear in my life somewhere.
That's
So
good. That's
easy
so
as
good.
that.
And so, and I love that. That's true. I agree. So great answer to that. And I don't think there is like these questions are big, and I think they're all based on personal experiences, because
Yeah.
it's like, well, truly, like if someone has mastered life, they've probably lived it all and then gone to be with Jesus.
They're in
and
heaven
so it's like,
somewhere with
hello,
the
can
Lord.
I have you on the
Figured it out.
podcast? I don't know. I don't know about that. But for someone who's identified, okay, I'm in fear, or I'm battling with it, or whatever the term you might want to use,
Yeah.
how do you not let that fear run your life? And how do you can you get away from it?
Good question. Yes, you can get away from it. And yes, there are things you can do with it. I remember earlier this year talking to a close friend, talking with her about the fear that I have had for a long time. And she was telling me about her husband and how fear had become a friend with him. Like he had been walking with it for so long that it became this thing that he was afraid to even let go of. It's like, who will I be without this feeling? I'm not myself, without this feeling. And I've had that before. Like, I'm scared to not be scared, which sounds weird. Like, I'm always like, the shoe's going to drop. Something bad's going to happen. Like, right? Isn't that how things work? Like, shouldn't I always have some kind of, always walking with it? And that is a lie from the enemy, that you should constantly be living in fear or in anxiety or of anything that's not from God. Like, they're not your friend, but sometimes we become so close with them that it is very difficult to let it go. And I think the only way we can let it go is by seeing God rightly and by knowing who he is and knowing what he did for us on the cross, which was provide a place for us to come and lay our things down and walk away from them. And leave them. We are never meant to carry things like that. What a horrible way to live life as a Christian, to not be free. That's not what Jesus came and died for.
So good. And it also reminds me of a quote you had quoted where it talks about, or this guy is saying, the most important thing about us just might be how we view God. I think that says a lot about us.
Yep.
Yeah.
He also said the quote that you shared, that was your quote that I shared, that you posted on your Insta, but God is too good to be unkind, and he is too wise to be mistaken. Yeah. And when we cannot trace his hand, we must trust his heart. And I was thinking about the imagery of that today. I was thinking about it. I imagine like a little kid, like sitting with their parent, just like sitting there and tracing the lines on their hand. Just like, you've got to be close. You've got to have proximity to, and you've got to feel safe to trace someone's hand. I would never grab a stranger's hand and be like, let me see all the lines in your hand. Someone well. It's someone you're trying to memorize and know, And then if we cannot trace his hand, we must trust his heart. But it's because of that closeness, like that relationship we have with him, that we know what his hand would be like, that we can trust his heart in the first place. Like, we understand what God is doing. We understand what his character is. We know who he says he is. Yahweh, the gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Like, that is who he is. That is the hand we trace. Always. That's always the thing he's drawing for us, and the map we're following, and the thing that he's doing. But when we can't trace it, then we have to know his heart. And then we trust it. And then we can let go of the fear, because we're like, okay, God, we trust you to do what you always do. It's in your character, it's your nature.
Yeah. And like with life, like, you've got two hands. So if you were like gripping all of the fear in your life, or like hanging on to like all these bad things, or these like mental loops you'll take yourself on of just how things have been in the past, and you're like this with them, well, at one point it's kind of like with monkey bars, like to get to the next, like you've got to have trust of like, I'm gonna swing myself to the next one and grab on to what's next. And I think that that's such a good picture too for someone listening, is like, whatever it is you're holding on to that isn't the hand of the Father, like let go of that and just trust between the swinging of monkey bars or the leap or whatever it may be, the leap, the jump from a plane. Like I always think of like skydiving. I've never been, so if you're listening to this and you happen to fly planes and let people jump off of them, take me.
Oh, you want to?
Oh, I want to.
You
but
would,
I always think of this picture of just like life with Jesus. And obviously for the person who's terrified of heights and planes and all the things, you probably won't rock with me on this. But for me, I'm like, that's so much of life. Like there is this just like gut wrenching feeling you probably feel before you're about to jump like a bajillion feet, miles, I don't even know, from a plane off. Mm-hmm. But then when you do take that leap or whatever it may be in life, and you just like jump fully into his plan and say, I don't know how this is all going to shake out. Like, I don't know the outcome, but I know the author. And so that point's incredible. Right. And it kind of just segues into the last thing I want to ask you before we wrap up our time here. And for anybody listening, this is what has just, the kingdom of heaven's attractive. And I say that because single-handedly, like that might be the one attribute that kept me coming back to Kathryn and Nick every single week. And now it's gone on to like, this is years of friendship that just keeps me drawn back. Like they're undeniably in love with Jesus. Kathryn's undeniably in love with Jesus. Yeah. And that's so evident from this conversation of talking to you that people can hear. And it's not like this formula that we don't have the answers for, you know, like, sure, you can't go up to a person and be like, okay, copy, paste, do this. Now you're going to have the exact same faith that I have. Right. But this person of Jesus, to walk and to be in proximity to him, I think that there are some key pointers. And so with all that, you are a person that reminds me of so much freedom, joy, like I said, has big faith and just dreams for all the things that God's going to do and all the things that he's planted in your heart. Yeah. And I know that there are a lot of young adults, young people listening in to this podcast and seeking to walk in lockstep with God, like seeking to get to a place that it sounds like you're at. And I can confidently say she's there. But just what are some things that are important to practice? Because I feel like rhythm and routine is like super important when it comes to building a relationship with somebody. So when it comes to a relationship with God, for what are some practical things that like you do in your personal life that help you maintain that relationship, and some things that you've done to help you get to the place you're at today?
Yeah. I think just like with in anything else, my relationship with Jesus goes like this, you know, like it just some days and some seasons and some weeks I'm like, this is awesome, you're speaking to me, like let's go. And then there are others and I'm like, hello, are you with me, are you hearing me, you know? And I think sometimes sometimes we overcomplicate it and we turn it into all these things, and you need to be in all these Bible studies and you need to be having all these conversations and accountability partners and whatever, but like let's keep it simple. Like do the simple thing. Wake up, read your Bible, and pray. Like, that is it. It's so simple that people don't do it. And that's what makes it hard. A simple thing doesn't mean it's an easy thing. It just means it's a simple thing, right? It's like eating a banana. It's a one ingredient thing, but people don't eat it. So you got to do the one thing. You need to read the word and you need to pray. And you need to talk to God and you need to know what he says about things. That is literally it.
So good. So if you've checked out of everything we've said, I hope that you catch that last minute, because that really is just a fast track to overcoming fear in your life, because you've got 2 hands, 2 feet, 1 body, 1 mind. Like you are here walking and living life in the garden you're presently in. There's not another place you're at, you're here. You're here. And with that, you can walk in complete freedom today. Kathryn, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I mean, seriously, reiterating what I said at the beginning, you're someone I just look up to so much in faith. It's fun to read through Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith people in for me in my life, in my journal. Like, you're a Hall of Faith person for me. So I'm so thankful for your love for Jesus.
That means a lot. Can I say one more thing?
Yep.
This is from a friend of mine. He's probably one of the wisest people I know. And he always says, trust God's ability to speak more than your ability to hear. So like, even if you've been walking with Jesus for 20 years or 20 days, like, God can speak to you. If he wants to get a message to you, he will get it to you. So just set up your time so that you can hear from him and he will speak. I felt like that needed to be said, but
that is good. That is like the exclamation point on the conversation. Everything y'all need right there. Well, friends, it's been so fun just having y'all listen in. We'll see you next week for another episode of In the Middle of Podcast. Whoop.